Hey friends, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, my name is LK, and today I am making over some of my subscribers' homes virtually in hopes that it gives them some inspiration to approachably and affordably freshen up their space just to make it feel a little bit more exciting and livable again. So I put together a Google form and a ton of you submitted some really awesome spaces that have so much potential. I think you just need like a little perspective shift and maybe a few things here and there, and I think you would just see a totally new room. But I could only get to a couple in this video, otherwise I would probably be here all day. But if you end up liking this format, I have tons more to review, so just let me know in the comments below if I should do this again. I'm thinking this would be a really fun series, and I was kind of workshopping a name, and I was thinking Living Like LK could be a good name for it, considering this is what I would do if I lived in your space. But let's get started and jump into our first subscriber's room. By the way, ignore the little toilet in the back. I cannot close the bathroom door because our air conditioner for our window unit is plugged into it with a giant extension cord. So sorry about it, but this is my office/guest room, so just don't look at it. Okay, so this is Angela's living room, and she's described her challenges as these. Mainly, it sounds like she doesn't like the flagstone fireplace because she feels like it's obtrusive because of how large it is. She also maybe doesn't like that it's curved and it's just taking up a lot of space. And she also wants a way to make her living room feel comfortable and cozy and also just match the fireplace aesthetic. I think she's also wondering if she should just get rid of the flagstone fireplace and mantle and do something a little bit more simplistic so that it matches the rest of her house, as she feels like her patio that's right outside of her living room and the fireplace mantle and the living room and the kitchen aren't really melding well. That's kind of what I'm taking away from this. So let's get into it. First of all, I really just want to say I love the flagstone and I think that it is gorgeous. I think it's really cool in like mid-century homes. I think it's really great in cabin style spaces, like rustic farmhouse spaces. And I know that you could potentially whitewash it, but I kind of want to come at it from the angle of leaving it as it is. And let me see if I can convince you to do that, because I do think there are a few things design-wise that you could do to kind of like mesh these spaces together a little bit more. So Angela said she's removing the dining table in the back area, so she has more room to work with. So my suggestion is that currently her layout would be like this if she removed the dining table, but I think, Angela, that you should move your whole living set to the middle of the living room because it's still gonna be in very close proximity and eyesight to the fireplace, and it's gonna make the living room now feel like its own space because there's a focal point in there and not just overcrowded with the dining table and the sitting area that's super close at the moment to the fireplace, which I feel like makes it not inviting and it kind of feels like you're just squished up against the wall at the moment. But let's take a moment to appreciate how amazing these floors and the skylights are. I think that is so awesome to have that in a living room space, to have all that natural light. And then you have those big windows that go out to your patio. I mean, that is something that so many people would love to have. So I absolutely love that, and we should definitely highlight that somehow. And I think the coastal theme that you're leaning into is super appropriate for this space. I think it's really great because of all the nature outside, the flagstone on the wall, and then just all of the sunlight that's coming in. But while I was looking through your photos, I did start to feel like I was missing some color, pattern, and texture. I like the backsplash in the kitchen. I think that's great texture. I think the floors have a great vibe as well as the flagstone. And I just feel like the color palette is very minimal. It's a good neutral place to start, but I would love to add some color in a space. And I think adding some texture or pattern to your rug and your throw pillows even would totally change up your space. So I did a really quick mock-up of what it would look like if you had a new linear rug. This one's from Nordic Knots. I really love how organic it is, and I think that this vibe still very much fits in with your coastal theme, but I think you can just like amp up the volume just a bit just to add a little bit more depth and variety and visual interest. So I found this little shop on Etsy that had the cutest pillows. I really thought these were neutral enough to fit into the style that you already have, but they add in just a little bit more fun and color, and also again pattern and texture just for that visual interest. So just changing out that would completely change your space already. And I think the colors of the rug, for example, are tying back to that flagstone. So already you're kind of connecting those two pieces and making it feel more cohesive. But I wanted to take it a little bit further and just create a couple more mock-ups of different things that you could do in this space in kind of an incremental manner. So we started with the rug and the pillows, but I wanted to now move on to other textiles in the space to bring in more of that texture, pattern, and color. You did mention how like the outdoor felt like it was clashing with the fireplace and everything else that was going on. So I know you probably don't want to of get rid of all that natural light. And the outdoor space is totally separate than your living room, so I wouldn't totally worry about it. But if it is a concern of yours, personally, I would just get some sheer curtains and put those over the 2 French doors so that you're adding that texture and maybe a pattern or a color like a creamy white, because I know you wanted the space to feel cozy and warm. So bringing in warmer tones of things will really help with that, especially since your walls have like a cooler toned blue grayish color. I think you really need to contrast that with some warmth. So putting the sheer curtains over the French doors will kind of still allow the light to come in, but it will block, in a sense, what's outside, and it'll also add texture and color. I also added in these cute green curtains from IKEA. They just released these, I think, recently, and I love the plaid pattern. It's a little bit different, but I think it could totally work in your space. And I think taking a risk on color with like a $50 set of curtains is such a great way to experiment with it, especially since IKEA has a 12-month return policy. So why not try something out like that and get a color in your space, whether it's green or blue, or maybe some like creamier warm yellows. I think those would all be super complementary to what you have already. In the second layout here, I've actually swapped your ottoman for a coffee table, and a coffee table that's made out of a stone material. So I think this one's from Lulu in Georgia. I just really love the veining on it. And the veining on there actually reminded me of sand on the beach, like when the water has washed past it a million times. And I think having something like that in a coastal space is so cool because it's representing the coastal vibe, but not in a most literal way. And it also brings in another natural texture. And so if you have this flagstone on the mantle and the fireplace area, and then you bring some stone over into that living area, you're just mimicking what you already have, but bringing in maybe a different texture and color of it. And I think it just starts to feel a little bit more cohesive and honestly a little bit more elevated. You'll also see here that I've removed the drapes and the curtain rod that you have, and I've actually added in some warm bamboo or rattan Roman shades on those 2 doors that look like maybe they're permanently closed, but even if they open, you could have more of these shades on here, because this is just another way to bring in some of the warm browns that were on your fireplace mantle. You can see there's a lot of really nice rich colors in those flagstones, and just having that over on the wall would bring so much more warmth, and it's still so in line with that coastal theme. I think this just brings a lot more variation to the middle of the living room, so that when you look at it, it feels like a different space from the kitchen. And now this whole wall feels like a focal point, and it's in alignment with your living room set. So in this next iteration, I've added an armchair in here, so you could add this anywhere that you have some extra space and just as an extra seating piece. And this all depends on what coffee table you end up with and the actual measurements of your room. But I feel like adding in another seat is gonna make the couch area feel a little bit more encapsulated, considering it is very singular. Those couches are kind of hard to make something feel cozy and warm because they're just so linear. They're only facing one way, whereas a sectional is facing like this, like 2 separate ways. This kind of adds something else to like cozy it up and bring something else in there so that multiple people can talk to each other while they're looking at each other. And then you'll see I actually swapped the rug for something darker. This is also from Nordic Knots. I think they just have really great rugs for a design reference, even if you don't buy from them. But I think having something weighted and dark in the middle could also really improve this space, because your kitchen is very dark. It's got dark cabinetry and the dark island. And I think having that mimicked over in this living room space would just really help, but it could also be warmer as well with the dark brown and not going in the black or gray direction. And honestly, I still think this is very coastal vibe. It's just a little bit more elevated and moody. So just kind of depends on what direction you want to go in. You'll see in this next layout, I've actually swapped the lumbar pillow with something more neutral. So even if you didn't want to bring blue in your space, for example, something with this plaid pattern ties back to the curtains, for example, but it also has just a lot of interest to it. It's textured, it's patterned, and so it doesn't really fall flat. I also changed out the coffee table for an additional option. You could do something a little bit more round that makes it feel a little bit more softer and cozy. I think all of these, or most of them, are like Crate and Barrel or Lulu in Georgia or Anthropologie. They have a lot of kind of like soft, feminine, cozy vibes, so that's kind of where I was looking. And I think this beechwood that's a little bit bleached out, that kind of warm gray tone, is something that would be really great to bring into your space. I also kind of really poorly screenshotted and cut out the lamp that you had, which I really like. And I found this other cute one, I think from Crate and Barrel. It's kind of like this greenish acid wash stone lamp with this beautiful wicker empire shade. And I think that's something really pretty you could bring into your space as well to add color and texture. I also added in another little wicker lamp on your fireplace mantle. It's smaller and it's from Target, and it's got like a pleated lampshade, so it's different. So you can see all your lampshades have variation, and the base of it is mimicked in your couch, and also the Roman shades and the other lamp if you were to go that direction. And the light is a bit higher. I noticed you don't have tons tons of lighting sources, and the one that is major in your space is the ceiling. So I think if you add in more lamps, that's just gonna bring more coziness. And honestly, you could add in at least 7 in this whole room. It's huge. And as long as you have the plugs or the surface space for it, it's going to just add variation in light and give you that like soup of light feeling where it feels more cozy and more experiential than just like a spotlight coming down from the ceiling. If you don't have a lot of plug access, you can get so many different battery powered light bulbs. I'll link some below. You'll also see here that I actually just changed the frame on your really pretty horse photo here with something that you thrift or you get in an estate sale. I just think having a little bit more variation in your frames would just add some more depth. And again, you're tying back into this flagstone fireplace mantle situation, and it's just making it feel a lot more warm. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is add in as many natural materials as possible, like wicker, wood, stone, marble. Anything that looks kind of natural and organic is going to feel coastal, especially if you stay in that more blue-green vibe, or even if you brought in some yellows and stuff, that would still be very much in line with your vibe, I think. And this next iteration here, I've just added a really big chunky basket to that sitting area on your mantle. You said people use that for seating, but I think you could use a big chunky basket there with some firewood, even if it's not always going to be used. Just adds in more of those natural textures and materials. And you'll see in this iteration, I've actually swapped out the green curtains for something more neutral, but something dark, because the darkness kind of is just going to weight down the space, and this color is so similar to your flagstone. Again, just tying it all in is really helpful. I think the pinch pleat is great, again, adding texture and refinement. And then I love like the wood curtain rod with these wood curtain rings on there. I think that just adds more natural vibes and it brings that warmth that we're going for. I think also you could probably get away with doing some track curtains. I just did those in my bedroom, and instead of hanging them into the ceiling, which might be kind of hard over that area, you can get the ones that come off the wall like 2 inches, but they'll feel like kissed to the ceiling a bit because of how the placement is. And so it'll just look really seamless. And I think that would be a lot better than just having this big curtain rod across your wall right there. And in this iteration, I just added the blue lumbar pillow back in and took out the neutral one. This is just complementing your wall color and bringing in more color. So you can see how just adding that blue pillow alone just really makes a big difference. But when it comes to the TV, I didn't see any TV in any of your photos, and maybe that's because you're having a hard time figuring out where to put it, because you don't have a lot of wall space, and having those stands for TVs is not super ideal. I tried that out in my living room refresh and I didn't find much luck. So I do think you could take a lot of the stuff off of your mantle and then mount a TV up above this flagstone area. It is very high up, but because you are in such a large, long space, if your seating area is in the middle of the living room, looking at the wall with the TV from there is going to be a little bit more eye line than it would be if you were super close up like you were. And this way you could also put it on a hinge and you could aim it like towards the kitchen if you wanted to do that, as I saw you had some bar stools in there. And I think this would potentially solve your problem, especially if you can get a plug situation over here. That would be great. But yeah, that is what I would do with your living room, Angela. I hope that helps you. I hope that helps everyone else who's watching if you're kind of having similar struggles. I know what it's like to have an obtrusive fireplace. It totally sucks if you're not understanding how to work with it, or if you just don't like it and it's not your style. At the end of the day, do what feels best for you, but this is just kind of my vision. And I would definitely encourage you to not get rid of what's there, because it is really interesting. And I think interesting parts of the home add character. They don't have to be exactly all matchy-matchy, and they don't have to be taken away just to add some like clean lines. They can really be embraced, and I think that's what makes a home super interesting. So anyways, that's it, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this is Barb's primary bedroom, and Barb gave me a very like minimal message, which is great because she did say that she is a minimalist. So she owns this 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo, and she just painted it this nice gray color, and it seems like she doesn't want to paint the baseboards or the trim around the closet or just the closet doors themselves. It also sounds like she wants some ideas that are budget friendly and also something that might be easy to do, as well as just something that's going to freshen up the space. But I have to say, Barb, you kind of stumped me with this one because I didn't really get a sense of what you want to happen in this space, or even what is maybe challenging you at this time, like what in the room feels stale that you want to refresh. I could of course simply suggest that maybe you get a new duvet cover or some pillowcases to add some texture or color into the room, but I decided to dig into your space and pick this for my video because I think this is a really common problem that a lot of people deal with. There's so many moments where I'll go over to someone's house and they know that I love interior design and they'll say, what would you kind of make happen here? And my response is usually, well, what do you want to do with this room? Like, what's not working for you here? And the response I usually get is, well, I don't know, this room doesn't really look as interesting as some other cool homes out there, or whatever it may be. And most often, a lot of people don't really know what they want to do with their room. They just know it kind of feels off and like not interesting. So Barb, I'm going to assume that you feel the same way about this room. So if any of you out there have this same sentiment toward one of the rooms in your home, then I hope that some of these tips that we go through can really help you. First, I want to just do a general review of your room. I think it's really nice and really calm. I love the bed frame that you have, and the color of the wood floors is just really rich. And I think it just adds a lot of like grounding energy to the space. I also really like that it's a warm wood considering you have very cool toned walls. Everything is really clean and simple, and I really like the layout of your furniture. And if this was a guest room that I was staying in, I'd be really happy with all of the space and neutrality because I think it would just really help me rest. That's what I think bedrooms should be. They should be restful, simple, but I also really think that they should be personal too. But before I get into it, I just wanted to share a quick little relevant sidebar. Matt D'Avella is a famous YouTuber, filmmaker, and minimalist, and because Barb shared that she's a minimalist, it made me think of this quote that I heard Matt say years ago that really changed my mind on minimalism and changed my perspective on it and really helped me kind of embrace my own version of it. So I just wanted to share it for Barb and for any of you out there who might just get something out of this. So here it is. When you try to be intentional with each thing that you bring into your life, you can easily overthink everything. Should I have purchased that dumpling steamer? Did I really need that action figure of The Rock? But the point of simple living has always been to make our lives simpler. Should we pause before we make a new purchase? Yes, we should, but we shouldn't have a meltdown over each thing we buy. We just need to do the best we can to use minimalism as a tool to bring the important things in our lives into focus and to help us let go of the things that don't really matter. And I love this because it means that you don't have to put all of your personal trinkets on display. You don't have to have 5 decorative pillows on your bed, all in the name of having a well-designed bedroom. But the way that I interpreted this quote is that there should be things in your home that are important to you, that do mean something to you. Things that express your personality, things that meet your needs, things that make your life simpler and happier. And at the moment, I'm not really getting a lot of personal touches in this bedroom, so I don't really feel like I know too much about what is important to you. So possibly you're wanting to see more of yourself in this room, and maybe that's why you submitted this room for a review. But I do want to provide just like a little outline and some examples of what you might be able to do in a room and just filter that through whatever you care about and what matters to you and see if that can help freshen up your space. So let's start with a few things that you can take some time to consider. So one idea I really wanted to share with you that I just talked about in my last video about approachable and affordable makeover ideas is changing out your doorknob. I think you could replace this really basic one with something that looks a little bit more like this that would actually kind of match your bed frame and just make your experience of walking in and out of the room a little bit more interesting. I also really think a nice rug in here would cozy it up and give it some warmth and texture and color. It would also really ground the bed in the middle of the room, and you can find something that represents you personally, whether it's your favorite color or something that's a little bit more minimal or textured or whatever it may be. I really like some of these options because they felt minimal and refined without having to be too busy and colorful, which I think makes these a really good alternative to maybe the classic Persian rug, for example. Secondly, I would consider changing out the knobs on your closet doors, especially as you're not going to paint and change the color of those, by bringing in some visual interest into that area, whether it's a pop of color or brass or more of that black matte color that you might have on your bed and the doorknob. And you're also just creating a little bit more cohesion in the room altogether. The founder of this really amazing fashion brand that I absolutely love called Bodhi, her name is Emily Bodhi, and her husband live in Chinatown, New York, and they did a home review on Vogue, and I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen it, I'll link link it below. Definitely go check it out. But I wanted to call attention to her kitchen knobs as they were really individual and unique, and it just adds a lot of character to their space. And yet at the same time, they still feel really minimal. No matter what you find interesting, there are so many unique individual options out there for hardware. So definitely take a browse on Etsy or Facebook Marketplace and just see what else is out there and see what maybe you could bring in to kind of liven up the space and make it feel a little bit more personal to you. Doing the doorknob and the closet doorknobs is probably the most easiest way to go about adding character and interest into your room. Also, if you wanted to do something a little bit more DIY focused, you could scrape your popcorn ceilings. I don't know how much that might cost, and it doesn't look super hard. I've never done it, but there's tons of DIY videos out there, and you could always hire like a TaskRabbit or something to do it for you. It's just like a solution that you put on your ceiling. It softens up the little crumbles, and then you just scrape it off and it lands on whatever plastic is covering all your stuff. And then I think you could just paint over it with a really simple white color, or you could totally drench your room in that same color and it would make more of an impact. And I just would feel a little bit more fresh, I guess. I also forgot to mention while filming that I think it would be really great if you just changed out your ceiling light to something that has a little bit more of a softer glow like this one. This is actually like something made out of glass instead of it being a lantern. So I really like that it's a little bit more refined than just a paper lantern, but it also provides the same nice soft glow that a paper lantern would give off. And then I also thought because you don't have a side table on the other side of your bed that you could add like a wall sconce. Something cute like this would really fit into your space, I think. And then you don't have to use the ceiling light as much, but you can still have some more light in your space. And that's something that I'll definitely discuss later with some other ideas. I think I'd also like to see some texture on your windows. These blinds I feel like are very standard and there's nothing wrong with them. They're very clean and straightforward, but having color and texture on your walls and windows just gives you more of this like immersive vibe. You feel like kind of wrapped in the room. And I honestly don't think it feels maximalist in the least bit. I actually think Roman shades would be great here, as I think they are the minimalists version of drapery. They offer function, but also style and color and texture. And they really do add a layered look without having all that extra fabric if that's something that's not interesting to you. I also really love the chrome frame on your wall, but what if you got a smaller piece of art or just cropped the art that you have with the matting on top and make it look a little bit more like this? It could be a really contrasting focal point. It just adds a little bit of tension and color into the space, which I think makes it feel smart and elevated. You could also find a much bigger frame that would take up more real estate on that wall while keeping the same piece of art, but you would just get a giant piece of matting to put it in, and then maybe off-centering it would kind of give that tension feeling again and make it look a little bit more interesting. I think this gives your specific piece of art a little bit of room to breathe, and it just makes it shine a little bit more. You can get custom matting done for like $80 or so, depending on where you go and how big the project is, but you can also do something like this yourself if you wanted to have like a fun little DIY project day. I also really like that plant that you have in the corner, and I honestly forget the name of those, but I used to have a couple of them in my house until my cat started eating them. So unfortunately I cannot have like almost any plants in my house, but I was thinking of putting some plants on a pedestal because then it would be kind of out of reach and they can't just sit on it to eat the plant. And so I was like, well, what if you put your plant on a pedestal and just kind of brought it up the wall a bit so that it kind of varies your eye and you're kind of looking around the room a little bit more. It's also adding that greenery to the wall, and it's also just becoming part of a focal point in that corner versus just kind of being super low. You can almost not really see it and enjoy it in that way. You could also add like one or two more pieces of really meaningful art or a really interesting mirror to that wall to make it more of a moment. And then if you did put a plant on a pedestal next to that little gallery wall that you're creating, the plant would kind of become an element of the gallery wall and just add a little bit more visual interest. I really like a layered feeling, especially when you're varying the things that you're layering. And at the same time, you can keep it really simple. And I think what I've done here still makes it feel like it's a minimalist bedroom. Right now, I'm feeling like the frame that you have on your wall is just kind of floating there. It doesn't feel grounded or connected to anything. It's not really making a big impact. And so I feel like if you wanted to have one small frame on a wall, you could do something like really dramatic. And I think that makes more of a statement than just kind of having something in the middle like this. And then I love to add just a little bit of functionality to a bedroom or a bathroom because they get used so often. And honestly, when we're tired, we throw our laundry on the floor, or the extra pillows from our bed end up there as well. And just having any kind of visual clutter and stuff that isn't organized can just like overwhelm your mind, especially in your bedroom. So I love having some kind of surface space to put things because then it feels like it has a home, even if it's temporary. So you can add something like a really minimal wood bench or a super comfy chair under a big piece of art on that blank wall. And I think it would just ground that little area and make it feel a little bit more warmer and cozy, while while also still feeling minimal and relaxed. This isn't so much about having true functionality in your space, as that can feel a bit cold, and it also isn't about cluttering it up with a bunch of useless things that you don't really need. It's more so about having multiple places to exist, which I think provides a room purpose and variety. I also think that there's a few different variations that you could set up this wall with a bench or a chair. You could also bring in like a really unique bookshelf, as I noticed that you had some books on your bedside table, and then you could create like a little reading nook here. You could also bring in like a small plant on a side table and then maybe put a big floor lamp in the background. Or you could even keep your plant in the corner here and then bring that side table next to like a cozy chair and put like a little lamp on there. I think having multiple different sources of light in a room can really provide like a cozy vibe, and you can turn the ceiling light off and it just feels a little bit more relaxing and honestly a little bit more minimal. So as you can see here, I just continue to swap out different pieces of decor just to give a different vibe and look. The best way to get started on this is to identify what is the most important thing to you. Is it approachability, affordability, creativity and interest, or is it a need? Maybe your doorknob actually doesn't work and you've been meaning to replace it for such a long time. Well, this would be the perfect opportunity to start looking for something to replace it with. But maybe affordability is important to you and you can't really afford a big cozy chair or a really unique bookshelf. So maybe you go out and find a really cool plant stand at a garage sale because it's like an old stool or something, and then you DIY it to make it match whatever vibe is interesting to you. Again, these are just all of my ideas of what I would do if I was in your room. So hopefully these are inspiring some creative ideas so that you could freshen up your space. If you remember to think about color, texture, pattern, things that are important to you, things that you need, then you're always going to have something to pull from when you want to freshen up your space. I hope that helps, Barb, and I hope that you got something out of this video if you're not Barb, and let me know again in the comments if you enjoyed the format of this video and if you'd like your video reviewed in the future. I had tons more to go through, but I could only get to so many in this one, as this ended up being much longer than I thought it would because I wanted to give some thorough responses, and I'm a long-winded person, so that is what it is. I'll put the link in the description below if you want to submit your room for a future video, and if you guys like it, then I'll definitely do that. But other than that, I will see you guys next week with another makeover. I really can't believe it, but I'm super excited to share this one with you, so I'll see you then. Bye.